And so it is a heck of a situation. We're getting a little off target here. Normally I talk about this, the 4 main points of why I'm running, but maybe this will give you, help pull back the curtain and let you see where my mind is right now in regard to what's taking place in our United States of America. I'm going to just flat out say this. When I talk to individuals, oftentimes I tell them I honestly believe that we have reached a point in our lifetime and in our nation's history where we have to decide whether we're willing to save America. Because the decisions are being so fastly made to change us that if we don't step up and do something quickly, it will be irreversible. I'm not necessarily saying we're going to collapse and there'll no longer be a USA, but it'll be a vastly and significantly different country than we've ever experienced, and it will have happened so quick in our lifetime. Now, the 4 reasons why I'm running. Number 1, government spending. It's one of those things when I actually mention it, I almost think you don't even need to go into it. Everyone's probably grossly aware of what's going on. Here we are, what? The average man and woman, if you've been to the tea parties, you've probably heard the statistic. What? The average man and woman works 4 months out of the year now to pay their state, federal, and local taxes. In spite of the fact they're paying more than ever before, obviously tax collections still aren't keeping pace with government spending. That's kind of an understatement. And so here we are in a situation where we have borrowed $800 billion from China. To me, if you don't think that the debt is serious, then I would just consider the fact that China is starting to slow the pace at which they purchase our treasury bonds. After all, they're starting to get concerned, maybe we can't honor all of our obligations. Now, do you think that if China is starting to get concerned about our ability to pay and all the spending we're doing, shouldn't you and I, the ones that have to pay the bill, the one who actually have to contribute to paying off that debt, should also be a little concerned? Add to that, the German finance minister just spoke to a group of economists overseas, and he wasn't doing it as a slam on America. He was just doing it as his observation of the world situation with all the economic turmoil everywhere, and he made this statement. He said, 2008 will go down in history as the year America lost her superpower status as a world economic power. No matter how she emerges from the recession, the world will always know her wealth is only on paper. True or not, that's a heck of a statement. And the truth is, if you do your homework, he's probably not too far from the truth. We've got to get our spending under control. And I'm not standing here telling you it'll be easy. The truth of the matter is, to fix every problem that's facing us right now, it is going to be painful for every one of us. The way to fix them is not through raising taxes. It's going to be cutting services, cutting programs, cutting earmarks, cutting out benefits that may have been promised for decades. It's the only way you will be able to stabilize the economic situation. Job creation, when you do a poll, that's the #1 concern of people in the Northeast Ohio, and all across the country. Job creation. You think government spending has something to do with job creation? They're connected. When I'm out and about touring these factories, over and over again, the corporate leaders will say, you know what, we'll get through this, we've had to make adjustments, we've done it before, we'll survive. Then the next thing out of their mouth is, but you know, we were about to start this project. We could have added 6 more people, 7 more people. We're not about to move forward now. With the government spending all this money, the writing's on the wall. In no time they're going to have to come to us to pay the bill. Things are too unstable for us to embark on anything new right now. And I have radio talk show hosts said, yeah, but I think the reason why they're not hiring is because they're just, they would rather go to a temp service. The truth is, because temp services, they don't have to pay the benefits, they don't have to do all this stuff. Well, the truth of the matter is, temp services are one of the most booming businesses right now, because corporate leaders are turning to them rather than hiring full-time, making full-time permanent commitments to employees. But the motive, I'm not sure, is quite what some of these more liberal-leaning members of our society think. It's not so much trying to avoid properly caring for an employee as much as it is when you talk to these employees, they don't want to play with someone's life. They don't want to hire Gordon and bring him on for 6 months. His family, let's face it, when you hire dad or you hire mom, there's a family that comes with them. They don't want to hire him and have to, in 6 months, tell him, okay, now you're without a job or without anything. And so you've got to get that government spending under control. You don't have to be an economist to know that that would make sense. Number 2, we have to focus on rebuilding the U.S. military and improving our weapons systems. I don't want us to be involved in any war. But the truth of the matter is, the only way you achieve peace here is if America can demonstrate to the rest of the world that she has the military might to deal with whatever threat might come her way. You've all heard me probably share before the example. At the end of the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 90s, there was a relatively peaceful period there throughout the world's history. Now, there's always places where there's conflict and going to be random terrorist attacks, but for the most part, things were relatively stable. And part of the reason was because it was now clear that America had the military might and her people had the fortitude to address any rogue nation that might raise their head and try to rob people of freedom or come after the American people. Interesting. Look what happened. Now as America, or at least the perception of America's armed forces, are that we've weakened because we're less united behind the military causes that are going on around the world. We've spread our troops to 131 locations. Our army that was 780,000 men and women in the 90s is now down to 546,000. U.S. Navy ships, we had 600 at the end of the Cold War. Now we're less than 300. That may sound like, well, you know, at least we've got our planes. The truth of the matter is, we don't have enough planes to fill those 200 remaining aircraft carriers. With the 100 Army Reservists and National Guard, 100,000 Army Reservists and National Guardsmen that are serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, I guess you can say now we're up to about 600-some thousand troops, but we're still far less than where we've been. Add to that the fact that China, expanding their armies faster and military intelligence faster than other nations around, North Korea doing the same, Russia starting to sell arms to Iran and Venezuela and starting to play war games with the very countries that stand on the floor of the United Nations and give eloquent speeches about how they've been called by Allah to rid the world of the U.S. by 2020 and to rid the world of the Zionist regime of Israel by 2020. We may think that sounds loony, but there have been loony men in history who've caused a great deal of chaos and damage and death throughout our world's history. I think it's very peculiar that in this point in history, Israel's elected Benjamin Netanyahu, a known fighter. He won't back down, and if he thinks there's a threat, he's going forward. Benjamin Netanyahu, a fighter's been elected in Israel. Iran's new leader. The gentleman who stands on the floor of the United Nations in the American New York City and tells the world leaders he's been called by Allah to rid the world of the U.S. and Israel by 2020. Look what's happening with him. He marches forward with his nuclear program. Is anyone stopping him? Maybe we pass a little resolution at the United Nations to say you shouldn't do that. Is it stopping him? And yet we're sitting back, and it's continuing as we speak. What the announcement this week that they're closer than ever now, and they think, what, within a year or 6 months they will have then what it takes to build a nuclear weapon? But this is perhaps maybe the most disturbing. Benjamin Netanyahu, the fighter, has been elected in Israel. The Iranian leaders making it known to the world that he's ready to take on Israel and the U.S., and for some reason Russia seems to be cozying up with him in the process by providing arms and otherwise. At that time in our history, Americans elect a president who is unclear whether or not he thinks we should be siding with Israel in these matters. A president who lets Benjamin Netanyahu leave the White House without any official statement because there was obviously significant disagreement. Now, I'll just insert in here, I am one of those people that do believe when the God that gave us our rights also said you should be a friend of Israel, it will be in your best interest. America may not want to abandon her. There's a reason why right now on the globe there's only two nations that are referred to as Christian nations, as Zionist regimes, America and Israel. And if America lets her light grow dim or go out, the world will go dark. And if America decides that it's no longer her place to stand by Israel in these matters, I believe we will have a shield of protection lifted from our country and we'll experience things we've never seen. And I don't hope to let it get there, regardless, and hopefully you won't let it get there.